"Grandma, my parents will steal your wealth after the celebration today," whispered my 10-year-old granddaughter, and her words hit like lightning, breaking the illusion of family devotion. I, Margaret, a retired real estate agent who built a fortune over decades, always supported them, but left early, masking my shock with exhaustion. What I did next, a clever plan to counter their betrayal, stunned everyone. I outsmarted them at their own scheme, and they'll never forget it. You're listening to this story on Renvenge Zinnia, where buried truths are told by those who live them. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. "I know what you're thinking, Mom, but please listen." David's voice broke through the phone, slicing through the quiet Sunday morning like a jagged knife. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. 7 a.m. calls weren't David's style, especially not with that nervous tremor I recognized from his teenage years when he'd crashed my car. "What sounds strange, son?" I settled back into my kitchen chair, watching steam rise from my coffee while morning light painted golden squares across yesterday's unread newspaper. "Well, Sarah really we both think you should definitely come to Lily's birthday party today." The words tumbled out too fast, like he'd rehearsed them but forgotten the rhythm. Something cold settled in my chest. Since when did they need to convince me to see my granddaughter? "David, when have I ever missed one of Lily's birthdays?" No, that's not what I meant. A pause. I heard what sounded like Sarah's voice in the background, sharp and insistent. "It's just that Sarah's been planning this for weeks, and she specifically asked me to call and make sure you're coming." I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the cream swirl into tiny hurricanes. Sarah specifically asking, the same Sarah who usually treated my presence like a necessary inconvenience. That's thoughtful of her. Yeah, she's really excited about it. David's laugh sounded forced, metallic. "The party starts at 2, but maybe you could come a little early. We wanted to talk about some family stuff." The spoon clinked against the mug as I set it down. Family stuff? In 3 years of widowhood, family stuff had never required special conversations. What kind of family stuff? Oh, just planning things, future things. Sarah has some ideas about how we can all be more involved with each other. I walked to the window, phone pressed to my ear, watching Mrs. Thompson in the neighborhood water her flower boxes, Sarah with ideas about family involvement, the woman who'd spent Thanksgiving dinner last year checking her phone every 5 minutes. "That sounds nice, David." I kept my voice level, but my real estate instincts were screaming. 35 years of reading people across negotiation tables had taught me when someone was selling something they didn't believe in themselves. Great. So, you'll be there early, maybe around 1:30. I glanced at the refrigerator where Lily's latest drawing hung next to my shopping list. A crooked house with stick figures labeled Grandma, Daddy, Mommy, and Me in purple crayon. That little girl was the brightest spot in my world since Clara died. Of course, I'll be there early. I wouldn't miss Lily's day for anything. Perfect. And Mom. David's voice dropped lower. "Just keep an open mind about what we want to discuss, okay? It's all about making sure everyone's taken care of." The line went dead before I could ask what he meant by everyone's taken care of. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then set it on the counter next to my untouched newspaper. Something wasn't right. David's voice had carried that same guilty undertone I remembered from when he was 10 and had taken coins from Clara's savings jar for snacks. Still, I made a mental note to listen carefully to whatever they wanted to talk about. 20 minutes later, I stood in my bedroom closet, staring at dresses Clara would never see me wear again. The green silk brought back her funeral, how Sarah had whispered about all this space while we buried my wife. Even then, something in her tone had felt calculating. I pulled the dress from its hanger and caught my reflection in the mirror. $85,000. That's what I'd given them over the past 4 years. Mortgage payments, car loans, Lily's private art school tuition. Clara would have called it excessive, but she'd also understood that Lily deserved better than her parents could provide alone. My wallet sat heavy in my purse as I dressed. 3 credit cards maxed out for David's emergencies. The urgent brake repair that turned into a full suspension overhaul. Sarah's temporary need for grocery money that became a monthly expectation. Each request delivered with David's shame-faced explanations and Sarah's perfectly timed gratitude. Walking to the kitchen for my keys, I passed the refrigerator where Lily's latest drawing hung beside my grocery list. She'd drawn our last gardening day, 2 stick figures by a purple crayon flower bed, both smiling. "Best day ever, Grandma," written in blue marker along the bottom. That's when Sarah's recent suggestion hit me with fresh clarity. 4 weeks ago, standing in this exact spot, she looked around my kitchen and said, "Margaret, don't you think this house is getting too big for you? There are lovely assisted living communities where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance." David had quickly changed the subject to Lily's art class, but Sarah's eyes had lingered on my marble countertops, the expensive appliances Clara and I had chosen together, the same calculating look she'd worn at the funeral. I grabbed my car keys from the counter, remembering Clara's last coherent words. "Promise me you'll always take care of Lily, but watch David carefully. He's weak, and weak people make dangerous choices when someone strong is whispering in their ear." At the time, I'd thought she meant his risky investment ventures or unreliable friends. Now, I wondered if Clara had seen something in Sarah that I'd missed. The way she'd started every conversation about money with Lily's needs, making me feel selfish for questioning the expenses. The garage door opener hummed as morning light streamed across my Lexus. Clara's car still sat in her spot, covered and pristine. I'd kept making payments on it for months after her death, unable to admit she was really gone. Maybe that's what they were counting on, my inability to say no when it came to family. The grandmother who'd rather pay than disappoint, who'd rather trust than investigate. Westfield Plaza buzzed with Sunday morning energy as I parked near the main entrance. 8:15 and already families were streaming toward the toy stores. Perfect timing for Lily's gifts. The Lego Botanical Collection drew me immediately. Lily had been fascinated by plants since her school field trip to the Sky Tower last month. The Orchid Garden set caught my eye, detailed enough to challenge her growing skills, but not overwhelming. $220 seemed reasonable for something that would occupy her curious mind for weeks. "Excellent choice, ma'am." The young clerk smiled as he rang up my purchase. "My daughter loves this series. Would you like gift wrapping?" "Please. It's for my granddaughter's 10th birthday. Next stop, sporting goods." Lily had mentioned wanting a real scooter, not the tiny pink thing she'd outgrown. The Razor model displayed near the window looked perfect. Lightweight frame, handbrakes she could manage, reflective strips for safety. $380, but her delighted face would be worth every penny. Loading the scooter box into my Lexus, I checked my watch. 9:10, plenty of time for one more stop. Margaret, what a lovely surprise. Emma Thompson materialized beside my car, clutching a shopping bag from the bookstore. My neighbor of 12 years looked genuinely pleased to see me, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. "Emma, good morning. Starting your weekend shopping early." "Oh, you know me. I like beating the crowds." She gestured toward the mall entrance. "Though I suppose you're here for birthday preparations. David mentioned Lily's party when I saw him last week. He mentioned it." I closed the Lexus's rear hatch. Curious. "Where did you run into him?" "Downtown, actually." Wednesday morning, I think it was. Sarah was with him, and they were coming out of Central Trust Bank with quite a stack of papers. Emma chuckled, looked very official and serious, probably refinancing something the way young people do these days. Wednesday, 5 days ago. David hadn't mentioned any banking business during his nervous phone call this morning. But then again, why would he? People handled financial matters all the time without broadcasting details. Probably just routine business, I said, shifting my shopping bags to my other hand. "Of course, dear. None of my concern anyway." Emma patted my arm affectionately. "Well, I'd better let you finish your shopping. Give my love to that sweet granddaughter of yours." She bustled away toward the bookstore, leaving me standing beside my car with a vague sense of unease. Banking business on Wednesday, nervous phone call on Sunday. The timing felt oddly coincidental, but then again, David always seemed to be juggling some financial crisis or another. I shook off the feeling and headed toward the flower shop near the mall's east entrance. Sarah had always appreciated flowers, and pink tulips would make a thoughtful gesture for the hostess of Lily's party. The florist, a middle-aged woman with dirt under her fingernails, wrapped a dozen long-stem tulips in silver paper with practiced efficiency. "These are beautiful," she said, adjusting the ribbon. "Special occasion. My granddaughter's birthday party. They're for her mother. How thoughtful. She'll love them." $35 for flowers that would wilt in a week, but Sarah's pleased expression would be worth the expense. These small gestures mattered in maintaining family harmony, especially when underlying tensions existed. By 9:30, my Lexus was loaded with packages that represented nearly $710 of birthday celebration. The Lego set, scooter, tulips, and the card I'd selected, each item chosen with Lily's happiness in mind. This was what grandmothers did. They spoiled their grandchildren shamelessly and enjoyed every moment of it. Driving home through Sunday morning traffic, I found myself thinking about Emma's casual observation. Still, as I turned into my driveway, I couldn't quite dismiss the small voice in my head that wondered why David had sounded so nervous this morning, if everything was truly as routine as it appeared. After wrapping Lily's gifts and grabbing a quick lunch, I arrived at David's house precisely at 2 o'clock. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. Margaret. Sarah practically sang my name, her arms spreading wide as if we hadn't seen each other in months rather than weeks. "You look absolutely wonderful today." This enthusiasm felt foreign. Sarah usually offered a polite smile and quick hug before disappearing into kitchen duties. Today she touched my arm twice while speaking, her eyes bright with an energy I'd never seen directed at me before. "Thank you, Sarah. The party looks lovely." I stepped inside, carrying the wrapped scooter box and gift bag containing the Lego set. Colorful streamers hung from every doorway, and balloon clusters filled each corner, far more elaborate than previous birthday celebrations. "Mom, there she is." David appeared from the living room, his voice carrying across the house like a carnival barker. "Come meet Alex from work. Alex, this is my amazing mother I've told you so much about." Amazing mother. David's workplace conversations about me typically focused on my old-fashioned real estate methods or retirement stubbornness. But today he clapped my shoulder with theatrical enthusiasm, his laugh echoing too loudly in the decorated hallway. The living room buzzed with familiar faces. The Wilsons from next door chatted near the fireplace, while Mrs. Johnson sat carefully on the couch, observing everything with sharp eyes. Juan and Maria Garcia helped their son Sammy arrange party games on the coffee table. "Grandma!" Lily ran toward me, her genuine smile cutting through the artificial atmosphere like sunlight. She wrapped her arms around my waist, and for a moment the world felt normal again. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." I handed her the gift bag. This Ono first, then the big surprise. She unwrapped the Lego botanical collection with careful fingers, her eyes widening at the orchid garden image on the box. But when she looked up to thank me, something flickered across her face, a shadow of sadness that vanished when Sarah approached. "Isn't Grandma generous, honey?" "Say thank you properly." "Thank you, Grandma. It's really cool." Lily's voice carried genuine appreciation mixed with something else. Guilt. Worry. A 10-year-old shouldn't sound so burdened during her own birthday party. David guided me toward the kitchen where Lucas Bennett nursed a beer and made small talk about insurance sales. The conversation flowed normally enough, but David kept interjecting with unnecessary compliments about my real estate wisdom and family leadership. Each comment felt rehearsed, like lines from a script he'd memorized poorly. "Margaret knows everything about building successful relationships," David announced to Lucas. She's taught me so much about trust and family loyalty. Trust and family loyalty. Strange topics for a casual party conversation, especially delivered with David's current manic intensity. Lucas nodded politely, clearly uncomfortable with David's excessive praise of his own mother. Sarah reappeared with a plate of canapes, positioning herself between me and the other guests. "Margaret, you simply must try these canapes. I made them, especially thinking of your sophisticated tastes." My sophisticated taste? Sarah had never paid attention to my food preferences beyond ensuring adequate quantities appeared at family gatherings. Now she hovered beside me, refilling my wine glass before it emptied, and asking about my comfort level every few minutes. From across the room, I watched Lily opening cards from school friends. Her movements seemed mechanical, polite, but distant. When Sammy Garcia asked about her new Lego set, she nodded and smiled appropriately. But her responses lacked the genuine excitement I'd expected. "She's growing up so fast," Mrs. Carter observed, settling beside me on the couch. "Such a thoughtful child. She asked me last week if grandparents and parents ever disagree about important decisions." My wine glass paused halfway to my lips. "What did you tell her?" "That families work through differences with love and honesty." Mrs. Carter studied Lily with concerned eyes, though she seemed troubled by something beyond normal childhood worries. Across the room, David and Sarah exchanged a quick glance, the kind of wordless communication that suggested coordination. They'd been doing that all afternoon, I realized. Brief eye contact, subtle nods, perfectly timed interruptions when conversations approached certain topics. The afternoon stretched on with forced merriment and careful choreography. Every smile felt calculated, every laugh slightly too loud, every gesture of family affection performed for an audience. Only Lily's behavior toward me remained authentic, though shadowed by whatever burden she carried as the party wound toward its conclusion and guests began gathering their belongings. David caught my attention with an overly casual gesture. "Mom, stick around after everyone leaves, okay? Sarah and I have been looking forward to that family chat we mentioned." The artificial cheerfulness began weighing on me like humidity before a storm. I excused myself with a polite smile, mentioning the guest room down the hallway. Sarah jumped up immediately, offering directions I didn't need, her concern feeling rehearsed rather than genuine. Walking away from the party noise, I noticed Lily watching me from beside the gift table. Something in her expression, worry mixed with determination, made me pause. When I reached the hallway lined with family photos, small footsteps followed behind me. "Grandma!" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I turned to find her glancing back toward the living room, ensuring we were alone. The birthday girl, who should have been glowing with excitement, looked instead like she carried the weight of the world on 10-year-old shoulders. "What is it, sweetheart?" I knelt to her eye level, recognizing the serious expression she'd inherited from Clara. "You look troubled." She bit her lower lip, a gesture that reminded me painfully of her grandmother during difficult conversations. "I need to tell you something important about Mom and Dad." My chest tightened. "What about them, honey? They're planning to take your wealth tonight." The words tumbled out in a rush as if she'd been rehearsing them. "After everyone goes home, I heard them talking last night when I was supposed to be sleeping." The hallway seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the door frame to steady myself, fighting to keep my expression calm for her sake. "What exactly did you hear?" Mom said, "You have too much wealth for an old woman living alone." Lily's voice dropped even lower. She told Dad they were going to fix that problem tonight. Dad seemed scared, but Mom said the papers from the bank would make everything legal. Papers from the bank. Wednesday's visit that Emma Thompson had mentioned suddenly made terrible sense. My real estate instincts, dormant for years, roared back to life with crystalline clarity. "Did they say anything else?" I asked gently, though my mind raced with implications I hoped a 10-year-old couldn't understand. Dad kept saying, "What if she finds out?" And Mom said it would be too late by then. Tears welled in her eyes. "Grandma, I don't want them to take your wealth. You're the only one who really listens to me." I pulled her into a fierce hug, feeling her small body trembling against mine. Clara's granddaughter carrying adult secrets that no child should bear. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing they'd planned this within earshot of innocent ears. "Listen to me carefully," I whispered into her hair. "You did the right thing telling me. But we need to keep this our secret for now. Okay, can you do that?" She nodded against my shoulder. "Are you going to stop them?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to handle everything." I held her at arm's length, making sure she could see the certainty in my eyes. "But we need to go back to your party now and act normal. Can you be brave for me?" "I think so." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Will you still love me if Mom and Dad get mad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Lily, nothing your parents do could ever change how much I love you. Nothing. Do you understand?" Relief flooded her face. The first genuine smile I'd seen from her all afternoon. "I love you too, Grandma." Hand in hand, we walked back toward the party sounds, but everything had changed in those few whispered minutes. The son I'd raised, the daughter-in-law I'd supported, the family I'd trusted with my heart, all of it now viewed through the lens of calculated betrayal. As we rejoined the celebration, I caught David's eyes across the room. He smiled and waved, the same false enthusiasm that had puzzled me earlier. Now I understood exactly what that performance was designed to accomplish. Returning to the party felt like walking onto a stage where everyone else had forgotten they were acting. I settled back into conversations with the natural ease that 35 years of real estate negotiations had taught me, while internally cataloging every glance between David and Sarah with devastating new clarity. Mrs. Carter was discussing her garden when I noticed David checking his watch for the third time in 10 minutes. Sarah appeared beside him immediately, their brief eye contact now obviously coordinated rather than coincidental. They were managing me, I realized, ensuring I stayed comfortable, engaged, and most importantly, present for whatever they had planned after the guests departed. "Margaret, how about some more wine?" Sarah's hand touched my arm with practiced concern. "You look a bit pale. Are you feeling all right?" Pale? Yes, I probably was. Learning that your family planned to steal your life's work might do that to a person. But I managed a tired smile that wasn't entirely manufactured, just a slight headache. "But I'm fine." Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the kind of micro-expression I'd learned to read in real estate clients. Relief mixed with calculation. A tired, slightly unwell grandmother would be easier to manipulate than an alert one. For the next hour, I played my part perfectly. Gracious grandmother, generous family matriarch, aging woman, perhaps not quite as sharp as she once was. I accepted their attentions, praised their hospitality, and observed their increasingly obvious coordination with the detached interest of studying a chess opponent's strategy. David kept steering conversations away from financial topics. Whenever guests mentioned the economy or retirement planning, Sarah redirected discussions about my house, my health, my future living arrangements. They were managing information flow, ensuring nothing conflicted with whatever narrative they'd constructed for tonight's important family discussion. Around 4:30, as afternoon light softened and guests began collecting their belongings, I announced my intention to leave. "I think I should head home early. This headache isn't improving." The effect was immediate. David and Sarah exchanged a look of genuine alarm. "Mom, wait." David moved to block my path to the door. "We really wanted to talk about those important family matters we mentioned. Remember? You promised to stay after everyone left." "Perhaps another time," I said, maintaining the weary grandmother persona. "I really need to rest." "But Margaret," Sarah stepped closer, her voice taking on urgent undertones. "We have something special planned for tonight. Something we've been preparing for weeks. Something they'd been preparing for weeks. The bank visit Emma Thompson witnessed. Legal documents, plans that required my presence and cooperation. I could see the desperation creeping into their performance as their carefully orchestrated timeline threatened to collapse. "I'm sure it can wait until tomorrow," I replied gently. "Family isn't going anywhere." David's face flushed. "Actually, Mom, there are some time-sensitive issues we need to discuss. Financial matters that can't wait. Financial matters that can't wait." How interesting that David would phrase it exactly that way. I filed the comment away with all the other intelligence I'd gathered throughout this surreal afternoon. "Tomorrow, son, I promise." I turned toward Lily, who had been watching our exchange with worried eyes. Kneeling to her level, I pulled her into what might be our last innocent embrace before everything changed. "Thank you for the most wonderful birthday party, sweetheart. Thank you for my presents, Grandma." Her small arms tightened around my neck. "I love you so much. I love you too, more than you'll ever know," I whispered against her ear, quiet enough that only she could hear. "Everything will be okay." Standing, I felt David's hand on my shoulder, heavier than necessary, almost restraining. "Mom, please just give us an hour. 1 hour to discuss these important family decisions." I looked into my son's eyes and saw not the boy I'd raised, but a desperate man whose greed had overwhelmed whatever love remained. The realization cut deeper than I'd expected, but my voice remained steady. "Another time, David. I need to go home now." Walking to my car while they watched from the doorway, Sarah whispering urgently in David's ear, both of them radiating frustrated tension. I felt the weight of performance finally lifting from my shoulders. Alone in my Lexus, I sat for a moment in their driveway, processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. My family had planned to rob me, tonight with legal documents and careful preparation. Starting the engine, I pulled away from the house where I had celebrated what might be my last normal family gathering. Inside my house, the silence felt different than it had that morning, no longer peaceful, pregnant with purpose. I walked directly to my home office, the room where I'd built my real estate business from a single property and stubborn determination. 35 years of important documents lived in the wall, safe behind Clara's portrait, as I spun the combination lock. Muscle memory from decades of business dealings guided my fingers. 22/19/62, Clara's birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me that her memory would help me protect what we'd built together. The documents told a story I'd been too trusting to read properly. Bank statements revealing the pattern of financial requests that had escalated from hundreds to thousands over 4 years. Investment portfolios worth far more than David or Sarah realized. Property deeds for 4 rental properties they didn't know existed. And most importantly, records of every payment I'd made to support their lifestyle. 312 individual transactions. I documented everything with the methodical precision that had made my business successful. Mortgage payments, car repairs, medical bills, private school tuition for Lily. Each payment justified by some family emergency or opportunity that seemed reasonable at the time. Sitting at my desk with Clara's photo watching from the bookshelf, I finally saw the manipulation clearly. The escalating requests had been conditioning, training me to say yes to increasingly larger amounts. Sarah's suggestions about assisted living weren't concern for my welfare. They were reconnaissance for tonight's planned theft. Every mortgage payment, every tuition check, I said aloud to Clara's photograph. They've been planning this for months. My phone sat silent on the desk. David and Sarah would be scrambling right now, trying to figure out how to proceed without me present for their important family discussion. The thought gave me a grim satisfaction. Opening my business card file, I found Robert Lawson's personal number. 25 years of friendship and professional respect with the vice president of Central Trust Bank. Robert would remember the careful, detail-oriented real estate agent who'd never missed a payment or broken a promise. More importantly, he'd understand exactly what legal documents obtained under false pretenses actually meant. The clock showed 8:30 p.m., too late for business calls, but I made a note for tomorrow morning. First priority, understanding exactly what papers David and Sarah had obtained and how to neutralize their legal effectiveness. Next, I reviewed my will and trust documents, standard arrangements that left everything to David with provisions for Lily's education and future. Written when I still believe my son possessed integrity and love for his family, rather than simply greed for our money, those documents would need immediate revision. Elizabeth Hayes had notarized most of my legal paperwork over the years, independent, discreet, and unconnected to any bank where David and Sarah might have allies. Another call for tomorrow morning, spreading the investment statements across my desk like battle plans, I calculated my actual net worth for the first time in years. $2.8 million in liquid assets, plus 4 rental properties, plus this house with no mortgage. Far more than David and Sarah suspected, and certainly more than they could steal in one evening's legal maneuvering. But this wasn't about money. This was about justice for a 10-year-old girl whose parents were willing to traumatize her with adult secrets. This was about punishment for adults who'd exploit an elderly woman's love for her family. This was about ensuring that betrayal came with consequences. Clara's voice echoed from our last conversation. Watch David carefully. Weak people make dangerous choices when someone strong is whispering in their ear. Now I understood. Sarah had been whispering for 4 years, and David had chosen greed over family loyalty at every turn. My phone rang suddenly, jarring me from planning. David's name appeared on the caller ID. I let it ring. Sunday morning brought clarity that a restless night had failed to provide. After finally falling asleep near dawn, I woke with my real estate instincts fully engaged and a specific plan in mind. Over coffee in my home office, I opened my business contact file to Robert Lawson's personal number. 9 o'clock seemed appropriate for calling an old friend about financial matters. Robert and I had maintained our friendship through 25 years of loans, investments, and the steady growth of Lawson Realty. He'd trust a call from me, especially about portfolio management. "Robert, sorry to bother you on Sunday morning," I began when he answered. "I've been reviewing my investment portfolio and wanted to get your thoughts on some consolidation ideas. Margaret, always good to hear from you." His voice carried genuine warmth. "What's on your mind?" "I'm considering simplifying my accounts, maybe centralizing everything for easier management. What are current banking policies on financial assistance programs?" "Well, there are several options depending on your needs. Are you thinking about automated services or more comprehensive management assistance?" Perfect opening. "Actually, I've been wondering about power of attorney arrangements, conservatorship options. Had any clients dealing with those recently?" Robert paused, and I could almost hear him considering confidentiality boundaries. "Funny you should ask. Just last week, I had a couple inquiring about guardianship procedures for an elderly family member." My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. "Oh, complex process, I imagine." Actually, they seemed quite prepared, had done considerable research on conservatorship requirements, documentation timelines, very thorough people, very thorough. My son and daughter-in-law had researched exactly how to seize my independence with legal precision. That's thoughtful of them to help their family. They were asking specific questions about mental competency evaluations, financial management documentation, timelines for court approval. Robert's professional knowledge was exactly what I needed. They understood the terminology better than most attorneys I've worked with. Mental competency evaluations, court approval timelines. They'd planned to have me declared incompetent and seize control of everything I'd spent 35 years building. The scope of their betrayal kept expanding beyond what I'd imagined possible. "Did they seem confident about their situation?" I asked carefully. "Absolutely. They mentioned having documentation ready, medical opinions prepared, said they expected the process to move quickly once initiated." Robert chuckled. "Most families aren't nearly so organized when dealing with elderly care transitions. Elderly care transitions. The euphemism made my hands clench around the phone. They'd researched how to institutionalize me while seizing my assets, and they'd done it with systematic professional thoroughness. Sounds like they really cared about their family members' welfare, I managed. That's what struck me most. how much preparation they'd put into ensuring everything would be legally proper and swift. They asked about expedited processes, emergency conservatorship procedures, emergency conservatorship for situations where immediate action was necessary to protect someone's assets from their own incompetence. Hearing my own situation described in clinical banking terms felt surreal. Well, I appreciate the information, Robert. Gives me a better sense of available options. Anytime, Margaret. Though honestly, you seem sharper than women half your age. Can't imagine you needing that kind of assistance for decades yet. If only he knew how close I'd come to needing it yesterday. Let's hope you're right. Thanks for taking my call on Sunday. Always a pleasure. Let me know if you want to schedule a formal consultation about your portfolio. After hanging up, I sat staring at my notes from the conversation. Mental competency evaluations, documentation ready, medical opinions prepared, emergency procedures. David and Sarah hadn't just planned to rob me. They'd engineered a complete legal framework to justify seizing my life. The phone rang suddenly, startling me from my thoughts. David's name appeared on the caller ID again. This time, I answered. Hello. I answered with deliberate weariness. Mom, thank goodness. I was worried sick about you leaving early yesterday. David's voice carried false concern. Are you feeling all right? Oh, David. I let my voice trail off. I've been having terrible headaches, hard to concentrate. That doesn't sound good. Maybe we should have you checked by a doctor. Sarah and I could drive you to the clinic this afternoon. That's thoughtful. I've been feeling so confused. Don't worry, Mom. We'll take care of everything. We'll be over in an hour. Okay. After hanging up, I spent 30 minutes preparing my performance. Mussed hair, old cardigan, and slower movements to mimic elderly confusion. When their car pulled in, I was ready. Margaret, we brought papers to help with your situation, Sarah announced in the living room. She held a leather portfolio. Papers? I blinked in bewilderment. What kind? David leaned forward. Mom, we've researched ways to manage your finances and medical decisions. Manage? I rubbed my temples. Everything seems complicated. Sarah opened the portfolio. These give us power of attorney for banking, bills, appointments, a backup system. I stared at the forms. It's overwhelming. I used to understand better. That's why we need this now, Sarah pressed, before it gets worse. David shifted. Mom, you seem different today. Different. I feel tired. Headaches make thinking fuzzy. They exchanged a glance, assessing my impairment. These papers make it easier for us to help, Sarah continued. You trust us? Of course. Your family. But could I sleep on it? Decide tomorrow? Their frustration showed. Sure, Mom. We'll come tomorrow morning. After they left, I dropped the act. Their documents revealed everything. Power of attorney for full control. Robert had warned me. 3 hours later, I reviewed notes in my office like planning a campaign. Elizabeth Hayes answered. Margaret, good evening. Elizabeth, I need notary services tomorrow at 9:30 for family documents. Of course. Power of attorney forms? Sensitive matter, so discretion, please. You can count on it. Elizabeth had notarized my real estate contracts for years. She'd spot coercion. Next, Robert Lawson. Robert, stop by at 9:45 tomorrow. I want to review my portfolio. Certainly, Margaret. After our talk, a thorough review is wise. Excellent. It might be educational. He chuckled. I'll bring paperwork. See you at 9:45. Robert would witness their plan. Final call to David. I've thought about the papers. You're right. I need help. Mom, wonderful. Sarah will be relieved. We'll come first thing. I arranged a notary for 9:45. Perfect. Thank you for trusting us. After hanging, I gazed at Clara's tulip garden. Tomorrow would decide if I managed it freely or from assisted living while they divided my work. I jotted the plan. 9:30, Elizabeth arrives. 9:45, Robert arrives. 9:50, David and Sarah arrive. 10 o'clock. Witnesses observe manipulation. Truth emerges. The irony. They'd researched legal theft. Forgetting witnesses expose it. Across town, they probably celebrated, thinking a confused old woman accepted help. They didn't know it was a trap by the mind that built what they coveted. I glanced at Lily's drawing. Tomorrow would decide if she grew up protected or taught loyalty is for sale. Clara's voice echoed from 4 years ago. Promise to care for Lily. I intended to keep it. Monday arrived gray and cold. Elizabeth came at 9:30 with her seal. Good morning, Margaret. Beautiful office. This should be straightforward. Robert knocked at 9:45 with his portfolio. Morning, Margaret. Ready for review? More than you know. Footsteps approached. David and Sarah entered confidently with their case. They paused, seeing Elizabeth and Robert. How thoughtful to arrange assistance, Sarah said smoothly. This makes it official. Indeed, I replied, voice firm. Please sit. David smiled. Mom, you sound better today. More like your old self. Exactly. Sharp and capable. I need to say something before signing. Sarah's pen stopped. Margaret, what's wrong? Nothing with me, but I know your plan. Silence stretched. David's smile faltered. What plan? We're helping. I know your Wednesday visit to Central Trust Bank, the guardianship procedures, mental competency evaluations. David paled. Sarah cracked briefly. Margaret, you're confused. We visited for our finances. Robert, what did they discuss Wednesday? Robert cleared his throat. Conservatorship procedures declaring mental incompetence, expedited court processes for emergency management. Elizabeth alerted. Ms. Price, these documents under false pretenses. They plan to declare me incompetent to steal what I built over 35 years. David strangled. Mom, we worried. You seemed confused yesterday. Yesterday I performed. Today you see me truly. I pulled documentation. 312 transactions over 4 years. $85,000 in support. All documented. Sarah desperate. Legitimate expenses. Conditioning to say yes until signing away independence. You researched institutionalizing me while dividing assets. Elizabeth. Highly irregular. Need full situation before notarizing. Full situation. They researched stealing my assets, lawyers for guardianship, fabricated confusion. David shook. We thought you needed help. Help managing $2.8 million plus 4 rentals? Help requiring emergency conservatorship? Sarah stood. You're twisting. We love you. Love doesn't involve conspiracy, Sarah, nor researching theft of independence. Robert. Questions specific. New terminology for significant planning. Elizabeth. Legitimate planning doesn't need mental evaluations. Room silent except David's breathing. He recognized the real estate agent who built their target. What happens now? He whispered. I stood feeling every year of my age, but also every ounce of my accumulated wisdom and experience. Now we discuss consequences. Consequences? I repeated, opening my desk drawer to retrieve the legal documents I'd prepared. I'm changing my will immediately. My estate will go into an educational trust for Lily, accessible, when she turns 21. David leaned forward desperately. Mom, please, we made mistakes, but we can fix this. The trust will provide for her college education, graduate school if she chooses, and startup funds for whatever career path she selects. I spread the new will documents across my desk. Elizabeth, I need these witnessed and notarized. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. Margaret, you can't do this to your own family. I'm protecting my family, I replied firmly, from parents who were willing to steal their grandmother's independence to fund their lifestyle. Elizabeth examined the documents professionally. Ms. Price, these terms are quite specific. There are conditions attached. If David and Sarah formally renounce all claims to my estate and demonstrate genuine change over the next year, I'll reconsider, but they must prove they've become the parents Lily deserves. Robert nodded approvingly as he witnessed my signature. The educational trust structure is excellent. She'll have every opportunity you never got to provide directly. David buried his face in his hands. What does genuine change mean? How do we prove that? By getting jobs that actually support your family instead of depending on me. By prioritizing Lily's happiness over your own financial desires. By showing me that my granddaughter matters more to you than my bank account. Sarah stood abruptly, her composure finally cracking completely. How are we supposed to live without your support? The same way millions of other families do, through honest work and responsible spending. The mortgage assistance ends today. The car payments stop immediately. You're both adults with college degrees. Figure it out. Elizabeth finished notarizing the documents with practiced efficiency. Everything is legally binding now. Ms. Price, you should keep these in a secure location. My attorney will have copies by this afternoon, I assured her. After Elizabeth and Robert departed with handshakes and promises of discretion, the three of us sat in uncomfortable silence. David looked broken. Sarah appeared to be calculating survival strategies. Is there anything else you want to say? I asked. David met my eyes for the first time since the revelation began. I'm sorry, Mom. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm genuinely sorry. Sarah said nothing, which told me everything about her priorities. Words are cheap, David. Actions over the next year will determine whether this family has a future together. 3 hours later, Lily knocked on my door, her school backpack still slung over her shoulder. Grandma, Mommy said you wanted to see me. I knelt to her eye level just as I had in the hallway 3 days ago. Come sit with me, sweetheart. We need to talk about some grown-up things. She settled beside me on the couch, her 10-year-old wisdom already sensing something serious. Is this about what I told you? Partly. Your mommy and daddy made some bad choices about money and there have to be consequences, but none of this changes how much I love you. Are they in trouble? They have to learn to take better care of themselves and you. But Lily, I want you to know that your future is completely safe. I've made special arrangements to make sure you can go to any college you want. Study anything that interests you. Her eyes brightened slightly. Even botany school, that's really expensive. Especially botany school. And if you change your mind and want to be an artist or a teacher or start your own business, there will be money for that too. What about Mommy and Daddy? They're going to work very hard to become better parents. And if they succeed, our family might be able to heal from this hurt. But even if they don't, you and I will always have each other. She hugged me tightly, and I felt Clara's presence in that embrace. 3 generations of love continuing despite betrayal and broken trust. Can we look at college brochures? Lily asked. I want to see what botany schools look like. Absolutely, I smiled, reaching for my laptop. We have all the time in the world to plan your future. Outside, summer was turning to autumn, and Clara's tulips were finally beginning to bloom. You're listening to this story on Renvenge Zinnia, where buried truths are told by those who live them. If you enjoyed this tale of family drama and justice, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To dive into the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching.